Welcome everyone to Unit 2, Day 1. You should have your new unit packet. If not, if you go to the Class Materials folder and then Unit 2, there is a PDF of the Unit 2 packet. You can print out whatever pages you need for it if you don't have the packet for whatever reason. So we're going to be working with parallel lines to start out today. And your homework you can be writing in your planner is day 1, which is page 6 and 7, and you'll upload that to Schoology as a single PDF by 5 a.m. tomorrow. So we'll start right on packet page 1. So this picture we have on the right here is the common picture we'll see at the start of this unit. What's shown there are two parallel lines cut by a transversal. So a transversal is any line that's crossing over the parallel lines. So if you hear me refer to parallel lines cut by a transversal, that's the type of picture that we're talking about. So if the lines are parallel, then there's a bunch of different angle pairs that are created. The first one we're going to talk about are corresponding angles. So corresponding angles are formed when the transversal cuts through the parallel lines. You can identify corresponding angles by being in the same spot of the intersection. So let's imagine this intersection right here. There's a top left angle, a top right angle, a bottom right, and a bottom left. Actually, let me do that with some different colors. So here's the top left, there's the top right, there's the bottom right, and there's the bottom left. So 4 different angles happening at that intersection. Well, let's go down to the bottom intersection. Here's the top left of that intersection. Here's the top right of that intersection. Here's the bottom right, and here's the bottom left. So corresponding means the ones that are in the same spots. So the top left and the top left, the 2 reds. The top right and the top right, the 2 greens. The bottom right and the bottom right, the 2 blues, or the bottom left and the bottom left, the 2 greens. So those are all pairs of corresponding angles. Corresponding angles, you can fill in on your paper, are congruent. Congruent means that they have equal measure and the angles physically are the same themselves. So if 2 things are congruent, then their measures are equal. And our notation would be this. Congruent is represented by an equals with a squiggly on top. So technically congruent is talking about the physical angles. Like if you picked them up and placed them on top of each other, they would exactly match. But if things are congruent, their measures are also equal. So congruent angles corresponding angles are congruent when a transversal cuts parallel lines. The next type is alternate interior angles. If a transversal cuts 2 parallel lines, then we have alternate interior angles that are formed. We'll talk about what we know about alternate interior angles. So first off, this red angle and this red angle would be considered alternate interior. Alternate because they're on opposite sides of the transversal, and interior because they are inside the parallel lines. The other set of alternate interior angles would be these 2 green angles. Now one of the ways to help identify alternate interior angles is do a zigzag. So if I do the zigzag going this way, the angles of the zigzag are the alternate interior angles. So that would be alternate interior and that would be alternate interior. Well, I could do my zigzag going the other way. I could do my zigzag going this way, and then those are my alternate interior ones. So if you do your zigzag, that can help you identify your alternate interior angles. So the zigzag that we would want to work with based on our labeled ones is this zigzag. This angle and this angle would be alternate interior. And the blank that we can fill in is that when you have parallel lines, alternate interior angles are congruent, so they have the same measure. So from this picture, we know that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Now, if we had, say, call this 4, we would also know that angle 2 is congruent to angle 4. But that wasn't labeled in the original picture, that's why I just had the angle 1 and angle 3. The next type of angle we'll look at are same side interior angles. So same side meaning the same side of the transversal, and interior meaning they're inside the parallel lines. So that we would be talking about angles like 1 and 2. Well, let's think about this. We're going to prove to you what we know about them. Let's look at angle 3 and angle 2. Angle 3 and angle 2 are on a line. Angles on a line are supplementary. So we know angle 3 plus angle 2 must equal 180. But we just saw a second ago, by alternate interior angles, that angle 1 and angle 3 must be equal. So we can replace angle 3 with angle 1 because we know they should be equal. So therefore we know angle 1 and angle 2 have to add to 180. And if you add to 180, that means you're supplementary. So in that blank for the same side interior angles must be supplementary. And notice angle 1 looks like it's acute, angle 2 looks like it's obtuse. Together they would equal 180. So our statement for that you can fill in, basically what we just wrote in the red also. The m in front of the angle just stands for the measure. The measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 should equal 180 degrees. All right, next up is alternate exterior angles. Alternate meaning alternate sides of the transversal, and exterior meaning outside of the parallel lines. So our example of alternate exterior here would be 1 and 3. They're on opposite sides of the transversal, and they are outside the parallel lines. Well, alternate exterior angles are also congruent. Okay, and if you look in the picture, 1 and 3 both appear to be obtuse. In this basic parallel line picture, that's one way you can determine if things are parallel or supplementary. If they're either both obtuse or both acute, then you can determine that they are equal. But if it's one of each, one acute and one obtuse, then they would be supplementary. So the statement we would have that you can fill in is angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Next is same side exterior. So same side of the transversal, but outside the parallel lines would be these two. Notice one is obtuse and one is acute. So in this basic picture, when we have that, they end up being supplementary. So a statement we could have is angle 2 plus angle 3 is equal to 180. And we could prove that the same way we prove the same side interior. We know 1 plus 2 are angles on a line, so they add to 180. We could replace angle 1 with angle 3 because we know they're equal by alternate exterior, so therefore angle 2 plus angle 3 is 180. Now the converse of each of these statements is true as well. So if you, for example, if you had same side interior angles supplementary, then that tells us we have parallel lines. In this unit, we will usually have the lines be parallel first, and then we will get the measures of the angles. So going to page 2, we're going to find the measure of missing angles, and we're going to have to justify each answer. Now often on the homeworks you'll see in directions saying justify your geometry steps. So we'll have to tell the reason or the theorem that allows us to set up or determine the value that we are in the question. So in letter A, notice we've got some angles that are inside the parallel lines. Well, if we do our zigzag, the angles of the zigzag would be our alternate interior angles. And we saw on the previous page that parallel lines give us alternate interior angles congruent. So we could say the measure of angle 1 is just equal to 100 degrees. And our reason would be alternate interior angles, and you can abbreviate angles with an angle symbol with an S, are congruent. And you can also abbreviate the congruent with its symbol, the equals with the squiggly on top. So in B, we want to see which of our things we're dealing with. We'll notice they're not on alternate sides of the transversal, they're on the same side. And they're not corresponding because one is in the top left but 122 is in the bottom left. So therefore, they're going to be a same side exterior. So in same side exterior, they're supplementary. So we would have angle 1 plus 122 equals 180. And our reason for being able to set that up are same side exterior angles are supplementary. So we can just solve this now. We can subtract the 122 over, and we get angle 1. And I'm not going to be picky about if you put the m in front for measure of angle 1 or if you just say angle 1. Either one's fine. 58 degrees. So the next one is not from parallel lines, but they're vertical angles. Vertical angles are formed when lines crisscross. The two angles that are not next to each other are considered vertical. So those would be vertical, and these would be vertical as well. Well, vertical angles are always equal. So angle 1 is just going to equal 92 degrees, and we can say vertical angles are congruent. Again, you can use your abbreviation for angles, your abbreviation for congruent. In D, angle 1 is in the top right of our intersection. At the other intersection, angle 3 is in the top right. Well, if they're both in the same spot, both in the top rights, those are our corresponding angles. That was the first one we looked at on page 1, and we saw that those were congruent when you have parallel lines. So we can just say that angle 1 is equal to 33 degrees because corresponding angles are congruent. All right, moving down to number 2. The arrowhead on the lines signifies parallel. So what this picture is telling us is that top and bottom side are parallel. What we can do to make it easier to see is we can extend our lines and it looks more similar to our transversal picture. So now over on the left there, it looks a lot like we've seen before. Well, those two expressions, they are not on alternate sides, they're on the same side. And if you're on the same side, the only time they'll be equal is if they're corresponding. Well, the x would be in the bottom right of this intersection. And the x minus 26 is not in the bottom right, because the bottom right would be down there. So they're not corresponding. They're on the same side, and they're in between the parallel lines. So that would be same side interior. And on page 1, we saw same side interior angles are supplementary. So the equation we can set up is x plus x minus 26 is equal to 180. And our justification would be same side interior are supplementary. All right, we're going to extend our lines again in part B to make it look more like our transversal picture. So in our intersections, the x plus 55 is in the top right. Based on where the arrow is pointing, the 3x minus 5 is in the top right. If things are in the same spot, that's our corresponding angles. So correspond means they're in the same spot. So that was the first one we saw, and corresponding angles are congruent, so we will set these equal to each other. And this is a lot of what geometry is. It's recognizing the geometric relationship, And once you know that relationship, using it to set up the equation. Once you have the equation set up, the equations probably are not as hard as some of the ones that you did last year, but the difficulty is knowing the geometric relationship and knowing what equation to set up. So our justification would be corresponding angles are congruent. And we'll go ahead and we'll solve this. Okay, when we're solving, and it's just a x to the first, we want to get x's on one side, the constants on the other. So I'm going to choose to subtract the x over. And then we got to get the constants over to the right, so I'll add the 5 over. And opposite of multiplication is division, so we'll divide by 2. And we get x equals 30. Now, whenever you find a variable in this class, always reread and see what the directions said. And the directions here said to find the value of x, so we're done in this one. We sometimes might have to sub it back in to find the actual angles. Now I'm just recognizing we never solved the other one next to it on A, so let's go back and we'll solve that. On the left we can combine like terms. Then we can add the 26 over. And we'll get 2x equals 206. We'll divide by 2. And we'll get x is equal to 103. So again, always just check and see if we need to sub back in to find the angles. This one in the directions just said to solve for x. So that's something to always check for, because it would stink to go through and solve correctly, but to not get full credit because you didn't sub back in if needed. All right, going to page 3 and looking at question 3, we want to find the measures of all the angles. So we're given the 50. So in that intersection where the 50 is, I'd say start working with vertical angles and angles on a line. Vertical angles are equal, so we know this 8 would have to be 50 degrees. Angles on a line add to 180. So we know that 50 plus angle 7 has to equal 180. And if we subtract the 50 over, that tells us that angle 7 is just 130. So angle 7 is 130 degrees. Well, we can do a zigzag here with our parallel lines. When you do the zigzag, the flat parts of the zigzag should represent the parallel lines. The zigzag, the angles of it tell us where there's alternate interior angles. So we have here and here. And alternate interior angles are equal. So that tells us that angle 5 has to also be 50 degrees. Well, if angle 5 is 50 degrees, we've got a vertical angle here with angle 1, because they're formed by intersecting lines but not next to each other. So angle 1 would just be 50 degrees. Well, 1 and 3 are same side interior. Those slanted parallel lines and transversal B, they're on the same side but in between the parallel lines. And we talked about on page 1 that same side interior angles are supplementary. Well, we already know from up above finding 7 that if 50 is one of the angles, its supplement must be 130. So angle 3 is really just going to be 130 degrees. And then 4 is its vertical angle. So 4 must be 130 degrees. From there, we could do a zigzag with these ones to get an alternate interior angle for 2 of 130. The other way you could have gotten angle 2 is angle 2 is same side interior with the 50. And then angle 6, you can either get that it's on a line with angle 2, so it has to be supplementary, or you can do a zigzag going this way for alternate interior, so angle 6 also has to be 50 degrees. Now it's important to know the angle pairs, but kind of a shortcut is notice in this basic picture, all the acutes were the same. All the acute looking angles were 50, and all the obtuse ones were the same, 130. So if you're not 100% certain, that's how you can kind of figure out the values at least, even if you're not sure the names of the pairs. So we're going to get a little bit more complicated picture. So the arrowheads, remember, are parallel lines. So with those parallel lines, we could imagine these are extended for our parallel lines, and then this would be our transversal here. Well, if we do our zigzag, those angles would be alternate interior angles. Well, alternate interior angles we know are equal when you have parallel lines, so that must be 39 degrees. Next, let's look at these three angles. Together, they are on a line. And angles on a line always add to 180. So let's stick a variable in there, and we can write a little equation. We know 95 plus 39 plus x must have to equal 180 degrees. So if we combine like terms, that's going to give us 134 plus x equals 180 degrees. And subtracting the 134 over will give us that x is 46. Well, notice we wanted to find the measure of angle A, not the measure of x. So we know that's 46, and now we can use that the angles in our triangle will add to 180. Okay, angles in a triangle will always add to 180. So we have 46 plus 90 plus A should equal 180. Combining like terms, that would be 136 plus A equals 180. And subtracting the 136 over, we would get angle A is equal to 44 degrees. Okay, so jumping over to the top of page 4, we got a more complicated picture now. We want to find the measure of each angle, and we have to justify why that is. So we've got the 60 and we've got the 20. And we want to find angles 1, 2, 3, and 7 to start out. But if you notice on the bottom, we have all the other ones. So you have 1, 2, 3, 7, but then you have 4, 5, 6, 8, and 9 down on the bottom. So when I look at this, some of the logical ones that I would find first is I'd start with angle 4. I would say I know angle 4 is 60 degrees because vertical angles are congruent. So let's go down to the bottom, and let's say that angle 4 is 60 degrees. Now the justification, we would just say vertical angles are congruent. Now likewise, we've got a vertical angle for the 20 degree one. That would be angle 7. So back up on the top is where angle 7 was. So we can say angle 7 is 20 degrees, and the same reason. Vertical angles are congruent. Now the next easiest ones I would say is all the ones that are on a line with those 60 degree or 20 degree ones. So for example, angle 5 there. 60 and the 5 should add to 180. So 60 plus angle 5 should equal, oops, I wrote 4, but meant 5, should equal 180. If we subtract 60, we get 120. So angle 5 would be 120 degrees. But that's going to be true about angle 8 as well. So down on the bottom, for angle 5, we can do 120 degrees, and angle 8, we can do 120 degrees. And our justification for both are angles, you can use the angle symbol, on a line, add to 180 degrees. And we'll put that justification for each of them. Well, we can do a similar idea for 9 and 6. We know 20 plus angle 6 should equal 180. So subtract the 20, and we get the angle 6 should be 160. And then same idea for 9, because that could be on the other line. So we've got 160 degrees for both angle 6 and angle 9. And the same reason as above, angles on a line, add to 180 degrees. Angles on a line, add to 180 degrees. So we've just got angles 1, 2, and 3 left. So these we know are 160 and 160. So I would suggest when you have parallel lines, they told us A, B, and C, D were parallel, always be on the lookout for the alternate interior. We could make our zigzag going this way, which would make angle 1 be 60, because the angles of your zigzag are the alternate interior, and those are always equal. So angle 1 is going to be 60 degrees, and we can say alternate interior angles are congruent. Okay, and maybe I should probably not abbreviate that. Alternate interior angles are congruent. Well, we could do a zigzag with the 20 as well. So if we did the zigzag that way, the 20 and the 3 are the angles of the zigzag. So angle 3 is going to be 20 degrees, and that's by alternate interior angles are congruent. And to finish up, angles 1, 2, and 3 are on a line. Well, angle 1 we know is 60, plus angle 2, plus the 20 for angle 3 should equal 180. So that's 80 plus angle 2 equals 180 if we combine like terms. We can subtract the 80 over, and that'll give us that angle 2 is just 100. So we'll have angle 2 is 100 degrees, and the thing we used is that angles on a line add to 180 degrees. All right, one more example to go through on the top of page 5. We're going to find the measure of angle G. So we've got those markings, the arrowheads, those mean parallel. When you got parallel, one of the most common things we'll use is the alternate interior angles. So try your zigzags. And if we do a zigzag going this way, that'll include the 57. And we know alternate interior angles are congruent, so that will give us the 57 there. Now with the 94, we can get the angle next to it because angles on a line have to equal 180. So let's call that x for a second. We can do x plus 94 is equal to 180. We can subtract the 94 over, and that would give us that x is equal to 86. So we'll label that in the picture. We can find this angle here because they have to add to 180. So let's call that y. So y plus 57 plus 86 has to equal 180. If we combine like terms, that'll be 143. We can subtract the 143 over, and we'll get y is 37. And then these are just angles on a line, so they should add to 180. So 37 plus g should equal 180. So subtract the 37 over, and we get g is just equal to 143. So we've got that g is equal to 143 degrees. Okay, one last thing is on day 5, we will need a compass. So a compass to draw circles, not like a north, south, east, west compass. So you will need to have your own. Circle Master compass is a good one. So you'll either need to go to the store and get a compass, or you will need to order one online. But we will need that on day 5. So if you have not done that, you need to plan on doing that either tonight or tomorrow. Make sure you have that. Have a great rest of your day.